Okay, let's be real. Everyone's fantasized about pulling off a heist. But what about one for millions of dollars while you're already in jail? So basically the story behind this one has it all. There's a mega rich Hollywood mogul, a criminal behind bars, a record-breaking heist, and a huge scandal. There's little doubt that one day soon, this will be a pretty epic movie, but today it's just everyone's favorite headliner. In order to understand just how a prisoner was able to steal such a huge amount of money, first you need to know about the players involved. Buckle up because this one's gonna get pretty frickin' wild. This all revolves around two people in completely different worlds. Sidney Kimmel is an American businessman, entrepreneur, movie mogul, and billionaire. He's ranked at number 2,141 of Forbes' richest people in the world as of 2021. That's with a pretty epic net worth of $1.5 billion. At the age of 94, he has lived a pretty extraordinary life. For instance, just look at the kind of houses this man buys for himself. He ended up picking up Johnny Carson's old pad for $46 million back in 2007. It's a stunning beachfront property that comes complete with a tennis court, a private pool, and some of the best interior design for a house I have ever seen in my entire life. There is not 1 square inch of this place that is not worthy of the front page of a magazine. 10 years later, when he put it up for sale, they tried to double the price to $81 million, but ended up getting the price lowered back down to under what he paid for it for $40 mil. Still, the man went from the son of a poor taxi driver to making real estate deals in the tens of millions. That is quite the trajectory. On the other end of this story is Arthur Lee Cofield Jr. He's a 31-year-old gang member who is about as far from a billionaire as possible. He was arrested for armed robbery and sentenced to prison. Seemed like his criminal career was over, but actually it was just getting started. You see, Cofield was able to smuggle in a cell phone into prison. Now for most people, those phones are used to keep up with people on the outside or just to keep away boredom. But for some, getting a phone in prison is a way to keep illegal business dealings on the outside going. Of course, pretty much no one uses one for what Cofield did. Stealing a stranger's identity and going on a huge spending spree. He was able to steal a shocking $11 million from the unsuspecting Hollywood bigwig. I mean, who could possibly see something like that coming? So, the question has to be asked, how was he able to pull this off? Was he able to hire someone via the dark web? Did he hack into the old man's account somewhere? Is he frickin' magic? I mean, there's a good chance he could be a little bit magic, yes. Just that kind of magic trick that's actually a super simple maneuver anyone could do if they actually put their mind to it. You see, when it comes to getting into someone's bank account, they say that security's biggest weakness isn't hardware or software, it's the meatware, otherwise known as human beings. Fooling a person is always better than circumventing technology. Evidently, all this man did was call the customer service line for Charles Schwab. He was able to get a hold of a customer service representative, and from there, the show began. Somehow, without ever having met or come into contact with Sidney Kimmel, he was able to convince this poor, almost certainly fired, rep that he was, in fact, Sidney Kimmel. From there, he was able to firmly steal the man's identity. He managed to convince them to wire money to his own company in Idaho. Millions of dollars that was somehow unverified by the real Kimmel. Something tells me that Charles Schwab is gonna rethink everything about its security, or rather lack thereof. So if you got a billionaire's identity in your hands, what do you spend it on first? A huge car collection, a new lawyer for your next hearing, a giant billboard outside of Sidney Kimmel's house that says, "I just stole your money." As you might have realized by now, Cofield is a bit smarter than all that. The first thing he did was buy 6,000 American Eagle 1-ounce gold coins. A 1-ounce American Eagle gold coin is worth $1,794, so he dropped the whole 11 mil on this venture just to get some cold hard currency to himself. He then rented a private plane to get the gold coins flown from Idaho to himself in Atlanta. He was then able to use the gold to get himself a super fancy mansion, a $4.4 million house in Buckhead to be exact. For obvious reasons, no one wanted to actually disclose which house was purchased. I mean, who would want to admit that they made a $4 million deal with an unverified person who turned out to be a felon behind bars? Kind of takes the taste out of the champagne they probably popped. We do know what homes in Buckhead tend to be like, and no matter how fancy you're thinking, think fancier. There's one estate in the area that's listed for $9,980,000. And even that looks underpriced. A good deal of the homes in the area are priced around $5 million, and they give us a pretty good idea of what kind of home he probably picked up. Think a classic-looking home with a great big foyer, marble floors, spiral staircases, and a big pool large enough to fit most other pools inside with room to spare. As far as getting mansions in Atlanta goes, you gotta admit, this man has impeccable taste. Unfortunately, that's where things took a big grinding halt. He got caught and charged with conspiracy to commit bank fraud and money laundering. So the coolest spending spree of 2022 came to an unfortunate but decisive end. Reactions to this crime have been all over the place. First, we've got the normal reactions, people kind of sad that a 94-year-old man who struggled his way into a fortune managed to get his identity stolen. Then there's the fact that our prison system's holes allowed for not only someone to get a contraband phone, but for that to be actually used to steal millions of dollars. There's a lot of problems in modern society that this crime has shined a light on. Though not all people are talking about that, though. Most people are just flat out impressed by this crime. I mean, just the ingenuity alone to plan the crime is one thing, but then having the gumption to actually go through with it and then succeed to the point that you buy yourself a mansion? I mean, I don't know if it was worth it in the end. As far as his newfound golden fortune goes, he ended up losing all of it. Not only that, but there's no way that he's not gonna get his sentence massively extended for all of the extra crimes he committed. Not to mention the fact that they are getting a ton of media attention, which is not going to do him any favors. Still, for a crime like this, I'm not sure you do it to get away with it. You do it for the headlines, and boy has this one made a ton of headlines. Headlines that are definitely going to make it into a movie one day. I mean, it has been said that this might be a record-breaking crime, the biggest robbery ever committed by someone behind bars in American history. Regardless of what it says about society, you've got to hand it to this man. This is one impressive heist. Danny Ocean, eat your heart out. He had to wait till after he got out of jail to steal his millions. Amateur. So who exactly is the victim behind this salacious story? In many ways, Sidney Kimmel has lived the ultimate dream in Hollywood. That is before this year when he found himself in a Hollywood nightmare. He was born the son of a taxi driver in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. From incredibly poor beginnings, Kimmel was able to turn things around by entering into the fashion industry. He started the company Jones Apparel Group in 1970 and slowly built up a small fortune, though none of that was his dream. Despite the fact that he'd found the kind of success he'd never known as a child, he still had fantasies about the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. In 1986, he made his dreams come true by financing his first movie. That would be the erotic drama 9.5 Weeks. The movie had a budget of $17 million, but despite mixed reviews, brought in a whopping $100 million. This success was just the spark, though. The flame would come later. In 2004, he fully committed to this dream. He founded Sidney Kimmel Entertainment, which has produced a ton of films over the years, mostly tiny indie hits. That includes Death at a Funeral, The Kite Runner, Adventureland, The Lincoln Lawyer, Hell or High Water, and Moneyball. Then there are the massive flops like I, Frankenstein, The Place Beyond the Pines, Walk of Shame, and the legendarily bad Book of Henry. Small-time hits and big-time flops aren't why people move to Hollywood, though. For Kimmel, he finally got that dream when he worked on a tiny film called Crazy Rich Asians. The budget for this juggernaut of a film was a surprisingly low $30 million. It brought back nearly 8 times that amount by earning $238.5 million at the box office. Yeah, that is the Hollywood dream. This is the wildest crime I've heard of yet in 2022. Honestly, it's gonna be hard to top.